Alright guys, there we go. We got both control arms done. Couldn't find any shims today because all the parts stores are closed, so I'll have to pick those up tomorrow, get some shocks and some springs and turn some rotors, and we can finish putting this back together. My goal is to get this rolling next week, and yeah, so that should happen. Not too hard to do. Got everything, all the components together to make it roll. I think we'll get the rear end out there tomorrow and get it cleaned up, and try to get the bottom of the car raptured liner and rapture liner or whatever this stuff's called. There we go, some of that stuff. We'll get the bottom of the car done and then move on to the inside of the car. Next, I want to get the car outside and sandblast the inside of the car. So yeah, that's going to be fun. So I had a question for some of the guys in the YouTube garage, or anybody in general that's a Ford guy. I'm not really a Ford guy. I got the Bronco out there and I bought this key for it because seem to have lost the keys for this thing, and I want to get this thing running, man. So I need to put a key in it, and I got this switch loose there. I don't know if there's a trick where I can get this tumbler assembly out, you know, without a key. I don't remember. I think for some reason I remember having to turn the key to a certain position to get it into the lock cylinder, but I don't know. If somebody could go through that, I'd really appreciate it. And yeah, this thing needs to get done. I was going through it just today, and you can see there's a whole box of brand new rubbers and windshield rubbers, vent glass rubbers, door rubbers, all the chrome grill pieces. I mean, I got everything for this truck to finish it, except sort of lost steam when the key got lost, you know. So I need to get the key thing straightened out. So somebody could, you know, give me a little tip on that. I know there's something to do with that little hole, you know. I tried putting a spring through the hole to pull the cylinder out, but no luck. It's probably the position of the lock without the key in it. So yeah. Oh, what else is going on today? Not a whole lot. Watched a couple of videos. I did talk to a compressor guy. I know there's somebody in the garage that's having compressor issues right now, and this is a general question for all you guys that live up north. I was talking to a compressor guy, and he actually builds industrial compressors, you know, and he's only been living in Florida here for now 5 years. He came from up north, and he said 90% of compressor failure happens in wintertime. And I found that sort of interesting, because you'd think, you know, the compressor's being worked in the summer, and we put fans on them and stuff to, you know, keep the pump cool and all that stuff to preserve the pump. And you know, we all have different opinions on oil and stuff, but he didn't really have an opinion on the oil. He thought that, you know, synthetic or regular oil is fine either way, and he didn't really, you know, have much to say about the argument that the synthetic oil can't absorb the heat. He didn't think that was the problem at all, and I never thought of the issue that he brought up. But he said that up north, and a lot of the industrial compressors and stuff that he worked on were located outside of the business, or in a compressor room outside of the building. And what they do up north is they actually install block heaters in the compressor to heat the oil up before the compressor fires up. He said 90% of the damage occurs when the oil's cold. And it's that cold startup on the compressor when the oil's very thick. It can't make it up to the parts. It doesn't sling properly. And until the oil reaches temperature, you know, it doesn't lubricate the parts properly. So he said that a lot of the bigger companies have installed heaters in the oil on the compressors, and it keeps the oil at a certain temperature so it's not too thick in the wintertime. So I thought that was pretty interesting that, you know, he said that 90% of the compressor failures are in wintertime. And that's definitely when I noticed mine struggling, you know, when it's super cold out. So I'm probably going to put a heater up something there when it gets into 30s, you know, just to heat that motor up a little bit before I fire it up, because it does make some good sense. But yeah, so got to find some bearings. Got my pistons and rods cleaned up there, ready to assemble into the block. And I think these are my bearings right here. These are standard bearings, and the race bearing. Well, I'll show you something on these bearings too. Now on this big block Chevrolet that I'm building, I bought 3 sets of bearings. I've got the standard bearing here, and then I have +1s and +2s. And what that means is this bearing is 1/1000th thicker than the stock bearing. And that's how you compensate for the clearance on the crank pin. You know, like if you want to have 1.5 thousandths, you know, you're going to have a way to adjust the thickness of the bearing, or you're going to have to machine the crank or weld it up. You know, you can't really put material back on the crank unless you're going to weld it and do all that crazy stuff. Now, what I wanted to show you on these bearings here, let me set this down for 1 minute. Cut this open. Now the plus bearings happen to be race bearings. They're actually true race bearing. They're an H bearing, and they're Federal Mogul. Yeah, Federal Mogul, and it's a performance bearing. You know, it's actually a high performance bearing. It's a little different material they make the bearing out of than the factory bearing here, and the bearing's actually designed a little different. And I've seen this really mess a good engine builder up that I personally know, and then it's just something that they don't do with a stock bearing, you know. So you can run into this issue with a Volkswagen very easy, not so much with an American car because they compromise for it in the bearing. We have the standard bearing here, and if you notice this bearing, it's pretty symmetrical all the way across. From this point to this point, it's all one level. You know, it's the same from the outside to outside as it is in the inside. Okay, that's the stock bearing. This is the performance bearing. Now you can tell there's a difference in the metal. You know, look at the back of this bearing. It's heat treated. It's almost a bronze looking bearing, you know. And this bearing has got the shiny Babbitt on it, you know, and it's all stock, you know. And this bearing's considerably lighter than this too. This is steel construction. This is steel layered construction. What I want to show you though on this bearing is the chamfer on the edge of this bearing. Focus. It's not going to do it. Right here on this bearing on the very outside, it's chamfered. You know, the actual side of the bearing is cut. And the reason why they cut the bearing like that, because on a performance crankshaft, the crankshaft here, this is a crank that's been turned. Not right. Obviously it's got turned and wasn't usable right from the machine shop, so that's why it's a little rusty. And anyway, when they turn the crank here on a performance crank, this cheek area here right next to the journal, or the flank of the crank, actually has a radius on it, and they do that to keep the crank from cracking right here. So the performance cranks sometimes have a radius, and if your crank's radius right there, if it's not cut flat all the way to the journal, then it's necessary to you know, chamfer the bearing like that, or it's going to pinch the bearing on the outside corner, and it'll actually give you a false reading. You know, it'll actually make the rod tight, you know, because it's binding up on the outside edge of the journal here. So that's something to check. You know, if your crank's been turned, you'll almost never run into that problem. But if you're dealing with a factory performance piece or an aftermarket crankshaft, it'll always have a little material left right there to keep it from cracking. And the bearing has to be chamfered like that. So that's why they have chamfered bearings and stock bearings, non-chamfered. In the stock applications, you hardly ever see a chamfer. And in the performance world, they're almost always chamfered there, especially on an aftermarket piece. So yeah. So if somebody could get back with me on that key thing, I'd appreciate it. Get some bolts soaking here. They're being stubborn. I had them soaking in the carb cleaner, but my carb cleaner's done. It's time to buy a new 5 gallons of it. That shit's not cheap. So yeah, that's where we're at. And I took this, well, I didn't take the bushings back because I just bought a different brand, but these bushings were the wrong ones. I did that video last night and they just fell right in. And when I came back out later that night to do the other control arm, or just to put it on the car, these fell right out, you know. So I mic'd the bearing, you know, and the bearings that I got today, or the bushing that I got today was a couple thousandths bigger. It was about 4 thousandths actually. So it pressed in fine and everything was good. So I don't know what the deal is with these. Some inferior, you know, cheap bushing. And I bought them from a good parts store, but they're just, I don't know, 2 of them were okay and 2 of them just didn't fit. So that's where we're at. We got it measured though and got some new ones and got those pressed in there, and that's looking good now. So we got this bus. I need to get on this tomorrow. Hopefully I'm gonna be feeling a little better tomorrow. I still feel a little rough today. Getting over it though. But I heard from Musty One's parents and they want me to get their bus and paint the roof on it. So we got to get that in here in the next week or 2 and paint the roof on that for them. And apparently Musty's dad got fired by Musty's mom, and she called up and said she wanted me to take care of the roof. So I told her that I would gladly do that for her. And yeah, so anyway, that's where we're at. I'm gonna try to come out here and get this shit cleaned up. I got to get this room clean because I need to get this car out of here for sure this week, so I can get my Beetle in here and get it painted. It's real close, so I got a little, probably about another 15 hours of block work. I got to block the inside of the car, and I'm hoping I can just block the inside and seal it. Same with the outside. Good coat of sealer. Gonna go with some dark gray, and the car is a gray color, so it should cover pretty quick. And yeah, I want to get that in there. I'm gonna take the car off the chassis, I guess, and just set the body in there, and that way I can get the bottom of the chassis and the inside of the doors and all that stuff. I'll probably take the doors off and just spray the body in the booth, and blow the shop up out here and put all the doors and the hood and all that stuff out here on stands, and hopefully it'll match. I'll have luck like Matt did. So that's where we're at on that. And not a whole lot done today. I'm gonna go right over and pick up Crown Vic, Mercury, whatever it is. My sister gave me her old car, and I think you guys remember that car. We put window regulators in it, and we gotta go pick that up. So yeah, anyway, that's what we're doing here today. Not a whole lot. Just thought I'd throw that up. I thought that was pretty interesting about the compressor though. You guys can take that or leave it, and you know, maybe put in your 2 cents if that makes sense to you. Heating the oil. I know a lot of you guys put block heaters on your engines, and it's the same principle. You know, oil gets pretty thick when it gets cold, and I don't think synthetic or regular oil, you know, synthetic might be less susceptible to the weather change, but I think it still has some you know, effect on the cold weather. Apparently, you know, from what this guy was saying, he, like I said, he didn't denounce the use of synthetic oil. He said that it is standard equipment, a lot of new compressors. So I won't pass any judgment on that. That's going to be a personal preference thing, you know. And shit, man, we're all grown men in the garage. We know what we like, you know what I mean? And a lot of times you're not going to change somebody's mind just because you think something. But I will show you something in this car. The oil temperature gauge isn't in here right now, but we'll do a test as soon as I get this car on the road. It's pretty close. This is a cylinder head temperature gauge, and this will be a good test for you because it's a real world cylinder head temperature. And we'll install the oil temperature gauge back in here, and we'll run the car with regular motor oil. I use Castrol 2050 in my regular cars with a zinc additive, or I use the Valvoline ZR1 with a zinc additive in it, because this car has a flat tappet cam, and if you don't use that, it'll wipe the camshaft out. But any hoozle, we'll run that oil, and we'll get a reference temperature on the cylinder head, and then we'll measure the oil temperature with the conventional motor oil. We'll drain that oil out. We'll have the same car to test it with. We'll put synthetic oil in. You'll see the oil temperature drop, and you'll see the cylinder head temperature go up by over 100 degrees with the synthetic oil in the car. That's why we don't use it in these Volkswagen motors. It's not because we can't afford to buy synthetic oil. I mean, you know, the motor in my race car is $10,000. And you know, if I could spend $10,000 on the motor, I can spend $7 a quart for the oil. But just doesn't work in my application for an air-cooled deal. I learned a lesson from Scooter. We had a doctor that built a streetcar down there, and he was an AMSOIL guy all the way, and we put AMSOIL in the car, and it had no oil pressure. You know, it would have 40 pounds with regular oil and 0 with the synthetic. And we tried going up on the viscosity, but the oil's thinner, and you know, just in general. But yeah, we ended up taking that motor back apart and trying to tighten the clearance up. That's another thing. Average bearing clearance, you know, is 1.5 to 2.5 thousandths. And if you're going to run synthetic, you probably need to be closer to 1.5 on the bearing clearance, because you start getting 2 and bigger. It's a lot of area between the bearing and the crank. Theoretically, you know, the bearing never hits this journal. The bearing rides on a thin layer of oil, and that's when the damage is done, is when the oil is unable to fight the friction and the part makes contact with the other part. So here's the zinc additive, the break-in additive for camshafts, and then I'm out of the zinc rich oil right now. But I know Lucas, they make air-cooled motor oil too, which is a good product. They make it for Harley Davidsons. It's designed specifically for air-cooled engines. And yeah, so so anyway, that's where we're at. Sort of nice here today. It's t-shirt weather. Don't know why we're sick, you know. 30 degrees one day and 70 the next. It's a little rough. It's a little rough on the weather. So we got Cat over there on squirrel patrol, trying to pretend it's a speed bump. And oh, I see the squirrel, but it's way off in the distance there. These cats are hunters. They're always bringing birds and squirrels home. Nasty. I had to bury a couple squirrels this week. All right, let me go wake somebody up. Somebody's taking a nap. I need to go headed to my mom's house. Be getting this car in the dark again. I went over last time to grab it, and threw a battery in, fired it up, moved the car, turned it off to take everybody's shit out of it, and wouldn't start. So I'm hoping I'm just going to throw a battery in and it's going to fire right up again, and I can deal with that problem when I get it over here. Sound like an ignition switch or something crazy. But I do have a starter button I'll take with me, and I was just wanting not to do it in the nighttime. Anyway, here's a shot of that. I gotta get this done. Now he wants all these dents fixed out here. This was all like that before. And this gets a bed liner over it, so you probably wouldn't see most of that. We're gonna go ahead and straighten that. And it's just something to make the job a little longer, you know. It's like we always find something on this. It's like all this crap back here, you know. I don't like that, but that's how it was, you know. It's like, you know, you bitch about how much the job is, but you keep finding shit. So some people make their own misery, you know. It's just never perfect enough, and that's fine with me. You know, just keep going, whatever you want to do. But I can tell you, this will be the last car that I do for this particular guy. Well, these two cars will. And for now on, I'll be buying cars myself and doing them at my own leisure and at my own speed, and you know, with my own decisions, because when you let somebody else make your decisions for you, you really compromise how your shop flows. I'm sure you guys have noticed that cars come in and they go out. We've done quite a bit of stuff together, but these two cars seem to stay here. You know, they don't ever seem to move, and that pisses me off. The more I look at it, the more I think about it, and just the whole job. So this is a car that I definitely need to finish for some better health. It's driving me crazy mentally and physically, but yeah, hopefully we're getting close. I dusted that down there because I got to block all that out. You know, we did some work down there, and I got to put some spot welds in with a cigarette butt and some primer and stuff like that. But we're pretty close on the front. It's more the back, you know. Again, it's shit that, you know, I get into stuff and find stuff, or he sees stuff that's been like that forever. So it's like with the inside of this car, you know, it was painted probably back in the 70s, and if you painted cars for a long time, you know how different paint smells. It sounds funny, but you can see right there that door has a run, you know, it's got a run in it right there on the driver's door. But you know, we can't have that this time, buddy. It better be perfect, even though it wasn't perfect to begin with before it was wrecked. That's how people get with their cars. They get wrecked and they have a perception of what it should be like after the insurance company gets done with it. And guys, you know, that run was there before you crashed your car. The crash didn't cause that, but yet you want it to be perfect and fix everything. So just like this rear package tray that had the little rust hole in it that we had to replace, you know, that's an extra 16 hours back there, 20, you know, anyway. So crazy times, but we're getting close. Get this shit out of here and get this garage flowing again. So I do got some different stuff coming down the pike that I want to do, but I can't do it until I get rid of these cars out of here. And as soon as these cars are gone, I promise it'll be a different channel. So we'll be doing some different kinds of stuff, and I got some plans, but I need to get through this stuff first. And I think that with the new stuff I'll be doing, I'll be able to get away from working on the car stuff quite as much, you know, and it'll give me a chance to still be in the car hobby but not have to work on the cars. So all right guys, I'm gonna go and shut this off, and you know what I mean, you guys have a good day, good night, wherever you're at. John, it was good to see your video last night. Thanks for the fireworks, buddy. That was pretty cool. You and Ronnie need to come on out and hang out one day. I miss hanging out with you guys. I was thinking the other day, I watched Johnny's videos now. John Marks, one of my old friends. Well, he's actually he's a man now, but he was a kid when I first met him. And him and Ronnie and Donovan, they sort of spoiled me. I used to have a shop a little bigger than this. And those three guys could pump some work out, man. You know, you'd leave and come back, and you wouldn't believe what a couple kids can do if they focus. But anyway, they're not kids anymore. They've grown up. They're doing it for a living now, which is pretty damn cool. But I wish they were still my neighbors, because I'd be getting a lot more shit done. I wouldn't be so embarrassed on how shit moves in my garage. But I got no help, you know. I'm one guy in here trying to do all these projects, and good help is definitely hard to find. And if you got somebody that's good to you and helps you out, treat them good, man. Pay them as much as you can, and you know, make it work. Make your projects go in and out of the shop, and keep that group of guys together, because I've worked at some really good shops and some good places, but I ain't never been in a shop since then, or I don't think I'll be one ever again, you know, where we pump out 14 cars a day. And there was days when we worked at Premier where we delivered 32 cars in a day. We'd go to the old folks home and hire old guys, and they come drive cars back and forth from the body shop to the airport, and we'd pump those cars out, man. It was, you know, I've never worked so hard in my life, but it's pretty good times back then looking back on it. You know, as hard as we worked, the rewards were big, and you know, it's been hard to replace. You know, I've never had help like that since. So I've worked with a lot of good guys, but you know, something about somebody that gives 110% is hard to find. So all right guys, I'm rambling now, so let me shut this off. You guys have a good night, and we'll flip this back on if I go get that Crown Vic, take you for a ride.